So compared to other Japanese brands out there, Mazda always position themselves a little bit above the rest. Well, that's the same case here in Malaysia because Mazda is often positioned higher themselves compared to Honda and Toyota, both in terms of product and of course in terms of pricing. So in case you want to have a taste of this Zoom brand, just to get to know a little bit more about its philosophy and all, I think there are no other perfect model for you to start with except for the CX-3 here. So into this video, we're going back to basic with Mazda CX-3 1.5 litre plus, the entry-level SUV for Mazda in Malaysia. My name is Mukhlis. Welcome back to Cari Cars. Alright, so as you and I know, the Mazda CX-3 is solely based on the Mazda 2 hatchback, and this model has actually been launched all the way back in 2014 with the recent facelift treatment given it back in 2018. But Burmas Auto Malaysia just given the model equipment update this car in December last year, so we get a slew of new equipment. So for example, at the front you still get the same horizontal front grille design as the facelift model, and you also get full LED headlights for the 1.5 Plus with auto high beam function. And moving to the side, just like the 1.5 core models before, it still uses the same 16-inch alloy wheels finished in single tone color. But of course, the CX-3 is all about the style because from the side here, I think it looks very stylish. It looks more like a jacked up hatchback compared to a proper crossover. This sporty body is also about the same as the Mazda 2 I mentioned, and at the back here you also got this combination LED taillights with Mazda signature heartbeat style turn signal. So I have to say, in terms of looks, I think the CX-3 is easily the best looking SUV in its segment in Malaysia. Alright, so inside the Mazda CX-3 1.5 Plus, compared to the core models before, I think the Plus model gets a slew of additional equipment, making it more livable than before. Okay, for starters, good news for everyone because now it comes with this 8-inch infotainment display that supports both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but unfortunately wireless connectivity is only available for Apple users. But other than that, you also get this fabric seats, which I have to say, at first it looks kind of okay, but once I feel it, it's actually quite alright. It's not like, it doesn't feel cheap as other car seats, other fabric car seats in the cheaper models out there. And of course, this being a Mazda, you got the central console stack here for the infotainment control. You got the gearbox here, and down here you don't have wireless charging pad, but instead you got two USB charging ports with a 12-volt socket, which is I think quite okay and usable, so nothing much to complain there. But fortunately, although the seats are fabric, you still get leather wrapped steering, which I think feels very, very nice. Mind you, this is actually the same steering wheel I think used on some other up-class models, so you still get this leather wrap feeling. And other than that, of course, you get the semi-digital instrument cluster. The center still come with the center speedometer dials, but you got two small screens on the side. I have to say, maybe this is somebody's gonna like this and some gonna hate this, but it still comes with this analog dial style control for the climate, and you still got this dial stand, and you still got the sliders and everything. I have to say, this really reminds you of the old times, shall I say. But rather than that, it's still usable, it's still functional, the aircon feels great, so nothing much to complain there. And other than that, there's nothing much. But although it's not full-fledged or full spec like the high models out there, I think the cabin still feels quite posh, especially compared to other cars, because I think Mazda really dialed out on the color play because they just keep things simple, make it all black because all black works all the time, and I have to say kudos for them for that. But unfortunately, surprise surprise, the Mazda CX-3 is still a small car. So as evident in the rear space here. Okay, as standard, I've adjusted the front seat here to my driving position, and you can see I've got barely much leg room here, and the headroom also quite limited, so I'm 175 cm tall. And other than that, I think the seats are alright. It's just using the same fabric as the front. The seating angle could be better, but you also got this tall central hump because the CX-3 is offered with the all-wheel drive version back then, but not anymore. But other than that, yeah, because this is a rather small car, you don't need the rear aircon vents. You also don't get USB charging ports, so you need to share with your front person. Well, same thing goes with the boot space, so nothing much to add here, but at least you still got a spare tire. Alright, so in terms of powertrain, nothing much changes here because the CX-3 1.5 Plus here is still powered by the same 1.5 litre 4-cylinder Skyactiv G petrol mill, outputting 114 horsepower and 149 Nm of torque. So this engine is still mated to a 6-speed automatic gearbox, same as these other Mazda models out there. But I've driven the 2-litre models before. Now I'm really curious to see what's the difference for the 1.5. Is it the power difference really that much? So what are we waiting for? Let's get behind the wheel. Alright, so folks, now we're behind the wheels of the Mazda CX-5 1.5 Plus. Alright, first impression you get when you're driving this car is actually, yeah, it feels a little bit slow compared to the 2-litre model, obviously because it's got a smaller engine and it's only output, like I said earlier, 114 horsepower and 114 Nm of torque. I think compared to the other Mazda SUVs, like for example CX-3, CX-30 and the CX-5, I think the CX-3 stood out as the sportiest or maybe like the harshest of the three. I would say the CX-30 strikes a perfect balance between performance and comfort, and the CX-5 is more comfort body because it's a larger car, obviously. But I have to say, yes, I agree with some of people say that the CX-3 is actually the sportiest SUV in Mazda lineup, and I have to say, yeah, it doesn't feel like a crossover or SUV when you're driving it because it sits quite low. It's not that tall as many other SUVs out there, and it really just feels like you're driving a Mazda 2, really, to be honest. But yes, like I mentioned earlier, it still uses the same 6-speed automatic gearbox, but I have to say in the CX-3 1.5 here, it feels a little bit sluggish, especially in terms of gear changes. I think that's partly due to that. The fact the torque peak is actually quite high in this car. So actually picking torque is like in 4,000 RPM beyond, so you might take a while, so you really need to slam on the pedal to get the car moving. But once it moves, and especially if you engage in the sport mode, you try the flappy pedal gearbox, it's actually quite nice and it feels quite sporty. Like I mentioned, it doesn't feel like an SUV crossover, which I have to say why the CX-3 stood as the sportiest of the bunch. But unfortunately, its sportiness comes with a price because the CX-3 is also the least comfortable car for you to be driven or drive compared to other Mazda SUVs. So it's got harsher suspension setup. It's just the same torsion beam at the rear, McPherson at the front. It's still got the GVC control, just like other Mazda models. But something about the chassis tuning or the suspension tuning feels a bit harsh. So you can get quite bumpy, especially at higher speed. Even on the straight roads, I tried this on highway like 150, 160 kilometers per hour. It feels a bit bumpy. But other than that, yeah, for those who just want a sporty feeling driving, I have to say maybe you'll feel better in the 2-litre model. But if you want to cheapen out, you just need a car that happens to be a Mazda that you can use daily for as maybe like a secondary car. I think the CX-3 suits well for you. So like I mentioned earlier, CX-3 is the sportiest and the harshest, CX-5 more on the comfort bias, and CX-30 hits the perfect spot. But I have to say, yes, despite this being a baseline Mazda model, it still retains some of the Mazda design, driving philosophy and ethos, which is good, I have to say. So at the end of the day, although it's cheap, it's still a Mazda. Part of the reason why I say the CX-3 still feels and drives like a Mazda lies down in its driving ergonomics, because as we all know, Mazda is famous for their Jinba Itai concept, which is the unison between driver and car, or in its case, the CX-3 and me, myself as driver. So as usual, all the cabin layout here, it's built around the driver, so all the main controls and buttons are within the driver's reach, including the gear shifter here, even the infotainment screen, which is only controlled by this control panel down here at the center stack instead of using touchscreen. And other than that, in terms of steering wheel, also like I said, it uses the same leather wrap steering wheel, which gives you a very nice feel when you're driving this car. And other than that, although you still got like semi-digital instrument cluster and everything, I think it's okay, it works at the end of the day. So as long as they're still within the Jinba Itai concept, I think that's what Mazda think about this car. Okay, in terms of safety, so for the 2024 model year update on the CX-3 here, the 1.5 Plus model finally comes with some Mazda iActive Send ADAS functions. This includes a blind spot monitor, you also got lane departure warning, and on top of that, even rear cross traffic alert, which I think that's quite neat. But unfortunately and ironically, this car doesn't come with the front parking sensors. So for those who are going to nose down park, still need to be careful because, like I said earlier, this car is not as tall as other SUVs out there, so you need to be mindful not to hit the curbs when you're parking the car. But other than that, nothing much to complain. You still got the reverse camera view, which is quite helpful, I have to say, with the rear cross traffic alert and everything. So safety wise, I mean, you don't get all the full swing, but you get enough. But I just wish just add front parking sensor. I mean, how much is it going to cost anyway? But other than that, still a good car though. Alright, so all in all, after being driven this car for quite a few days, I have to say the Mazda CX-3 1.5 Plus still holds a candle being a Mazda's car despite its entry-level moniker. So what's not to like, you still got the same Kodo design as other Mazda SUVs, and you still got the Jinba Itai concept and philosophy inside and when driving the car. But unfortunately, you also got some little drawbacks, being the 1.5 litre engine is less peppy than a 2-litre one, and you also get some discounted equipment on board. But other than that, I have to say this car is perfect for those who are looking for a sporty SUV crossover that doesn't need that much of space, and more importantly, if you can afford it, because this car, it's not cheap, because it is priced at 115,720 for this 1.5 plus model, where the 2-litre models goes beyond the 120,000 ringgit mark. Partly because this car is actually fully imported from Thailand instead of being locally assembled like other Mazda SUVs in Malaysia. So I have to say, if you're looking for, like I said, a sporty car, and you still want an SUV crossover somehow, but you don't need that much of space, I think you really should consider the CX-3. But if you think you need something a little bit more sportier, maybe a little bit more luxury, a little bit more balance, I have to say, maybe you opt to save a little bit more and get the CX-3 instead. And there you have it, folks. That basically concludes our video on the Mazda CX-3 1.5 Plus here. So what do you think about this car? Would you buy it? Would you prefer something else? As always, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. For more content like this, check out caricarzcom/news. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. My name is Mukhlis. Take care.